According to the Cambridge English Dictionary, trauma researchers emphasize the resilience of the human psyche. Resilience meaning the ability to be happy, healthy, or successful again after something difficult or bad has happened, or the ability of a substance to return to its usual shape after being bent, stretched, or pressed. Welcome to the Arose from Rubble podcast, where there's no good, bad, right or wrong opinion, and no discussion is off limits. Arose from Rubble is primarily about resilience in the absence of perfection, the knowledge we gain and apply on our journey to self-actualization, physically, mentally, and most importantly, spiritually. Join and explore with me as we journey toward our higher selves. We'll explore spirituality, occult knowledge, practical metaphysics, universal law, self-actualization, relationships, life, and love. And I'm your host, Arose. Greetings, gods and goddesses, and welcome to the Arose from Rubble podcast. I'm your host, Arose. Today's topic of the podcast will be critical thinking. It was referred to as right thinking in etymology, so I don't want to say what's right because right can be subjective. However, as defined by the Webster's Unabridged Dictionary, critical thinking is exercising or involving careful judgment. And also, according to the American Philosophical Association, the idea of a critical thinker is someone who is inquisitive by nature, open-minded, flexible, fair-minded, and has a desire to be well-informed, and also understands diverse viewpoints and is willing to both suspend judgment and consider others' perspectives. So with that being said, I want to quote Albert Einstein in saying that we can't solve problems using the same thinking that was used to create the problem. So as a critical thinker, I would say it's to question everything in practical terms. And in considering questioning everything, that's what I did in regards to coming to the conclusion or the foundation of my spiritual awakening. I began to question everything that was foundational or that I thought was the foundation of my life came into question. And it was very scary. For a lack of a better word, I would say I was scared to death because my foundation, everything around me was questionable. People, places, things, everything that I believed to be true about myself, about my life came into question. And in spirituality, that's considered or defined as like the dark night of the soul. And the dark night of the soul is basically a shattering of your perceived reality. And that's exactly what happened. My perceived reality was shattered and I was left with nothing but a bunch of questions. I even questioned my belief in my spirituality or I wouldn't say I've never been religious per se. However, I did use the Bible and the principles of the Bible as my spiritual foundation or religious foundation. I wasn't a regular church attendee or anything like that. However, I believed everything that was in the Bible, and not saying that that's not relevant because it does have its relevance. However, I understand now in thinking critically that the Bible is based on stories and allegories from different people's perceptions, said to be prophets. And what I began to question is how did those perspectives change? Because we only got one aspect of that person's perception. So was I here to create my own perceptions? And as a result of that, I began to consider that actual fact that if God created everything, then God also created those people. And they had their perceptions based on their experiences. And if I'm a direct creation of God, was it my responsibility to gain my own perspective and perceptions based on my experiences? And that was kind of the catalyst to my spiritual journey and my path as far as critically thinking. I'll have to be honest in saying I was always a thinker, and I always pretty much thought for myself, and I felt like I was a leader amongst my peers, because I didn't just go along to get along. I was always the one that if I felt something and it didn't feel right, I wasn't going, I wasn't participating. So I did have that just innately instilled in me. Also, critically thinking, how necessary is it for us to be able to consider the views of other people, to be open-minded, to be flexible, and to be inquisitive by nature, to want to know. So that led me to thinking, like, why do I believe these things? The things that I believe that created the foundation of my reality. Like, the people that taught me, the people that I looked up to, who taught them? Who did they look up to? And more than anything, how happy was I with what was created or how I was living at the time? So that led me to explore myself and my relation to God. That also led me to question all of these systems around me that pretty much govern how I live my life, what I aspire to do, what the things that I have in my life, the people, all of that. Like, why do you believe the things that you believe? So my challenge to us is to question that. What are our foundations? Where did your moral compass come from? Do you have a moral compass? Are you an integral person? Where's your character derived? How do you judge what is quote unquote right and wrong? And where did that perception come from? One of the things that I learned when I did finally decide to attend college in my life, I realized that the purpose in the higher education was to cultivate your awareness of not just yourself and your perspectives, but other people and their perspectives. To actually give you some culture, not necessarily teach you a specific skill or trade. It was on my journey in higher education that I realized a lot of the fallacies involved in one of these systems, which was the education system. I witnessed parents bring their children fresh out of high school into this institution and just pick a career off a board. What do you want to do? And I consider how old I was, which was double their ages at the time, and how I'm still exploring and I'm still on this journey. So how possible is it for a 18-year-old, which is the average age where you finish your 12 years of school, how realistic is it to think that you know what you want to do for the rest of your life, where you're about to embark on your first financial obligations, perhaps, if you weren't fortunate enough to have that paid for by your parents. You're about to acquire this debt to learn something that you know nothing about. And how wise is that? It wasn't. It was my conclusion. It wasn't. I saw kids getting kicked out of major universities after exploring for a few semesters and being in $20,000 worth of debt from a semester and a half, 2 semesters in this institution that they weren't prepared to attend, didn't necessarily have an end goal. And then the parents, who were a lot of what was egotistical, even bringing their kids, because we take pride in our children being educated, and we took pride in education, period, because we were taught that was the way out. That was the way out of our circumstance, to get educated so you can get a job, which is part of the system, is to get a job. You know, when you on a job, if you ever worked in a factory type setting, they got the bills just like the bills in jail. They got times for everything. Time for you to eat lunch, time for you to go to the bathroom, time for you to, everything that you need to do is on a time schedule. And if you're not able to think outside of that, you don't even realize that subconsciously you being programmed. You don't even think about it. And bigger than that, you guys might not be aware, but I homeschool my youngest son. And I came to that conclusion after a lot of my interactions with the education system, just from a higher level of awareness at that point. And I knew that the best teacher for my child was me. When I think about the fact that, like I've said, I taught myself a lot of things just being able to read and to comprehend. But more than anything, I've gotten to the point that I got to from exploring my own natural gifts and talents, and how far away from that do we get with the indoctrination of education. But I think the icing on the cake for me, which I would like for you all to do after hearing this, is to go and research the General Education Board and the philosophy of the General Education Board, funded by the Rockefellers and Frederick Gates, to see the philosophy of the people, if you want to refer to them as people, that create the curriculum for these education institutions. Look at the philosophy and let me know if you feel the same about receiving your education / indoctrination from these people. Look into that, because it changed my whole perspective. And it actually, you can see the philosophy playing out every day. Critical thinking is a must on the journey to self-actualization, because when you begin to critically think, it forces you to go in to explore yourself, to find out the things that you innately know or the things that you innately desire. When I think about even the foundation of what I said was religion in my life, or spirituality in my life, and the fact that it was the Bible and biblical principles, when I think about the fact that those were individuals as I am, and no matter how long ago it was, when I look at myself and I analyze my own thought process, I realize that I have my own internal moral compass. Nobody needs to tell me what's right per se or what's wrong for me. I base that on how my actions, my thought processes, and my thinking makes me feel. I base that off my experiences with myself, what I desire to create. Those are things that we should naturally know. And the more we journey toward exploring our higher selves, we realize that we are creators. We also realize that we have both light and dark within us. And we get to choose from which perspective we want to create, from which perspective we want to respond to life every day. The lower nature is closer to the animalistic nature, which is your lower self, which is what I equate the concept or the thought process of the quote unquote devil to the lower self, to the nature. It's just a lower level energy. Now, God is equivalent to my higher self, my higher nature, the high vibratory energy, the highest of vibratory energies, just from thinking critically about who I am and who I desire to be. So when we on this journey towards self-actualization, it's obvious that you need to be a critical thinker and you need to question things. You need to have dialogue with other individuals who do the same. We need to question our values, our belief systems, our traditions, as it relates to every aspect of our lives and what those things derived from, and how important it is for those thought processes to evolve as we create, because we are the creators. Our ability to critically think is necessary for success. Now, success is not defined outside of you like we've been taught. That's something that has to be defined for yourself. And you decide that based on the peace that it brings into your life. You don't lend those thoughts or the foundation of your life to something outside of you. And if you desire a family or just another person in your life that you would like to co-create with, it's important that that person has similar views or similar desires to create the same things that you would like to create. And what we learn in relation or in relationships is that that's why people come together. Well, it should be why I think that it should be why you desire to come together with somebody else, because as you evolve into your higher self or you self-actualize, the people that don't resonate with you anymore, those relationships are going to dissipate. They will leave your life for some reason or another, and you have to be okay with that and trusting that you are going to get somebody, or not, I don't want to say get as if it's a possession, but you will attract somebody on the same frequency as you. You don't have to be totally in alignment where you get there the same exact way. So it's more like a meet me there type of energy. And meet me there is the compromise that's involved in a relationship. We have to be able to view where we're going and how we're going to get there from different perspectives. And in this life, there are different angles of light. That's why once you reach a certain level of consciousness, I think it's natural for the thought process of things being quote unquote right or wrong to go away, because you realize that all of it is necessary. That's the polarity of living, is that it's all necessary. It's not necessary for you to define something as right or wrong. It just is what it is. And I needed all of that experience to come into my situation, life, whatever, to teach me what it is that I needed to know so I can move forward, so I can grow, so I could evolve in my thinking, so I can gain a better understanding, so I can gain more clarity. It's all necessary. That's why I don't subscribe to good and bad or right or wrong, because sometimes that could be cultural. You know, some things that are illegal here in America is legal in other countries. You know, the way other people live their lives may be wrong to me, but right for them. You know, it depends on what it is that you desire to create for yourself. And when you open your mind to more objective perspectives it'll naturally create more harmony because you get more acceptance. You get more acceptance for yourself. You extend yourself more grace for when you didn't know better, quote unquote. And then it extends grace to others for not knowing because they may have a different point of view. We are who we are based on our experiences. We believe what we believe based on our experiences. And everybody's experience is different. Everybody's purpose is different. That's why the goal is to come to a place where we can love unconditionally, because unconditional takes the onus off another person to live up to your expectations, because you understand that I'm the creator. At some point, if we are no longer in alignment, then that's when it's time for us to part. But when we think about some of the tricks and traps, like even me, I've been with my mate for the last 34 years, my husband. Initially, it was better to marry than to burn, because that was my thought process. That's what I was taught. But now, as I evolve in my consciousness, I realize that the whole concept of marriage perhaps could have been a distraction. And it's not, don't get me wrong, I love my husband. I love the idea of marriage. I understand it. And we are in agreement about what that actually means for us. But as a collective, I don't feel that it's up to me to decide for others if that's good or bad or right or wrong for them. I believe that it's a choice. And I also understand, because I've been in a relationship with the same man for 34 years of my life, which is more than half because I'm not that old. We just been together since we were 13 and 14 years old. I also understand the difficulties in becoming what's considered one with a entirely different human being. And I think the blessing in our situation is that we did grow up together. We came from the same environment, so we did understand some of the same things. We did aspire to have some of the same things. However, this is still a journey. And at this point on my journey, I realized that if something happened and we weren't together, it's okay, because maybe it was just time for us to go in different directions, because we are not in alignment any longer. And I think if we get a consciously aware perspective of what our experience is supposed to be in this reality, it'll take the expectation off or away from even having an expectation, rather than just allowing things and people to be. My perception at this point is that marriage is making a decision to come together with another individual or individuals, whatever floats your boat, and do life together. Learn, grow, and explore together. And the more expectations you have, the more unrealistic it'll be. If it's not gonna be about unconditional love, then it's gonna be that much more difficult. Because when we have expectations, people let us down. And we let ourselves down. Think about how often we break promises to ourselves. We say we're going to eat right. We're going to exercise. We not going to do this anymore. We not going to do that. And then it's the same old thing tonight. The reality of it is we have to allow things to be. Applying the concepts of critically thinking from an objective perspective, I understand that there is going to be an objective perspective. And I have to be okay with that, even in the process of co-creating, because I am the creator of my reality. Everything that's in my life right now is a result of my behavior and my thought process and my application of those behaviors and thought processes into my reality. And the same goes for all of us. If we don't apply the concept of thinking critically, then we just going along to get along. That's when others are creating for you. That's when you are not the creator of the menu. And you know the saying that if you're not at the table, then you on the menu. And that's how things happen to us and not for us. That's how we get to a point when we are watching people drive past us with masks on in the car alone because we don't critically think. That's how we could be on the brink of a financial crash that took place this time 20 years ago. That's how we could look at the General Education Board, read the philosophy page, and see how that's playing out in our everyday lives. Because nobody's critically thinking that a child that's 18 years old is prepared to choose a career and perhaps become financially responsible for their first debt obligation at 18 years old. That's how we can be willing to cast our vote for two options and think that it'll count. That's how we can think that we need to control guns when guns don't kill people, people kill people. That's how we can think our value is about anything outside of us, anything outside the substance of self that we share with another. It's because we don't critically think. I just want to invite all of us, because on this journey towards self-actualization, we have to be able to think about everything that we see around us. When we think about the concept of the apocalypse, the world coming to an end, which is what we are told we are in the midst of. However, did we research the apocalypse? Or are we just basing our level of fear on what somebody else has told you? Or did you go see that the apocalypse means just the lifting of the veil, the exposure of everything that's going down here in this 3D reality? And when I say down here, I'm referring to the esoteric cliche of as above, so below, or the biblical principle of what's bound on earth is bound in heaven. It's synonymous. But you have to critically think in order to tie those two things together and understand that everything that's happening in this physical world is also happening in the cosmos. Do we understand that the cosmos even exists? Or are we just experiencing our realities from the perspective in which we see? Or do we understand that the more we know, the more we see? It's just like being a professional at something. So I'm a hairstylist. So when I go out in public, the first thing that I see on people is usually their hair or something aesthetic as far as how it looks, because that's my natural, or one of my natural gifts. It's just like an electrician. I could walk in the same room as an electrician and I can see everybody's hair, but the electrician is going to look at the electricity, the light fixtures, how it's wired, what are the components. I wonder what wiring they use behind the wall, or a plumber, or any other field expertise. The more you know about something, the more you see. So we have to evolve in our knowing. And that's why learning is so critical. And learning a multitude of things, not just one thing. I always thought that it was something wrong with me because I was always learning something. Like I'm what they classify as a jack of all trades. And I've always heard the saying, or I got teased, well, you a jack of all trades and a master at none. But then when I began to research the jack of all trades, the quote actually says, a jack of all trades and a master at none is sometimes better than a master at one. And when I thought about it, it makes me think about my grandmother, who used to always say it's better to know a little bit about a lot than a whole lot about one thing. And I believe that, because although I've tried a multitude of things, I know a little bit about a lot. I have a lot of skills to offer, especially regarding what I want to create as far as Arose from Rubble is concerned. Like I said, being able to exchange skills in this community. I've ran a business, so I understand the finances of a business, how to set up a business. I've done taxes. I've been a loan originator. I went to carpentry school. Like I said, I'm a hairstylist by trade. I'm aware of how to repair credit, even though I don't believe in that system. It was something that was good to know. It served its purpose in my life. Being aware, learning, growing, which is the two things that we should always be doing. Critical thinking will be the third. Pay attention as to what's going on around you, where this information is coming from. And especially as it relates to the systems of this society that we are living in, and this news media that we are listening to, even what I'm doing as a podcaster or as a content creator. Who are these people? Who are we? I'm going to share a little bit about myself throughout this journey, but how many podcasters are you listening to that's actually giving you stories about their lives and honest stories? Who are they? How aware are they? Are they self-aware? Because today, the time of YouTube University, everybody is an expert. So who are you listening to? And more than anything, are you listening to yourself? Because the truth is going to register in your spirit. That's for certain. That's what those goosebumps are. That's energy in your body. That's something that somebody is saying, or something that you saw that registered with your spirit, that gave you that feeling, that surge of energy. It's going to register. And that's what even the Bible meant when it said to try the spirit by the spirit. The truth is going to register. However, we need to be able to think critically about where our information is coming from. I saw recently they got this thing going on about the relationship experts. That's like going to a fat dietitian, or I say overweight dietitian, or talking to somebody about marriage that's not married, talking to somebody about being a successful business owner that doesn't have a successful business, or make it make sense. But more than anything, where's the fruit? Because a healthy tree is gonna bear fruit. Thanks for listening to the Arose from Rubble podcast. As a disclaimer, I am not a licensed therapist, counselor, psychologist, or psychiatrist. I'm a student of metaphysics and occult knowledge who is bona fide in life, relationship, and self-actualization. If you would like your questions addressed live or in private, or perhaps you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the show, feel free to email me at dia@arosefromrubble.com. That's DEA@arosefromrubble.com. Also subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and Instagram at Arose from Rubble. And again, thanks for listening.